Welcome back to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Teed, and I'm here with a special guest today, Katelyn Carlson of Katelyn Carlson. And so excited to have you back. We were just talking. Welcome, Katelyn.
Thank you so much for having me.
We were just talking. This is like a full circle moment. When I was first starting my business, and I think Katelyn was too, she was the first person that I ever interviewed. And it was the first interview
It was the first time I had done. And I remember being so nervous. And this time I'm like, I feel so excited. So it's cool to feel how the energy can really shift in that way.
Yeah.
But I'm so appreciative of you asking me to be here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know that we are all busy, but I feel like you have so much amazing information to share with people on their scolio journey. So I'm excited to hear and ask you lots of questions. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, like where are you located and like kind of what do you do?
Yeah, so I am here in Austin, Texas. I was born and raised in Austin. I am a massage therapist, and I also do coaching work with people, specifically with people who have scoliosis. I work with teens and parents and adults as well. And we really focus on what the whole sort of emotional aspect of living with this condition is, and what it's like to have this going on in your life when you're a teenager, with school, with family, with friends, with doctors, how you get to know yourself, how you get to know your body, and really all sort of aspects of that. And then with parents, it's more, helping them build different sort of communication skills with their teen, how to prepare for going to the doctor's office, what's actually going on inside them when they're witnessing this happening to their kid, and everything that, it's such an emotional experience for a lot of parents as well. And then with adults, it's like, cover the bases of all sorts of stuff. But a lot of times, because there is a lot of stuff to unpack from when you're growing up with this diagnosis, or even how you're dealing with it in life right now, and how it touches so many different parts of our lives and what we feel worthy of or capable of, or how it shapes different relationships. It's like we can really dive in deep, and I love doing that. So that's what I've been up to.
So needed. And I feel like it's cool to hear you talk about that, because I feel like your practice has really evolved since you first started. It's cool to hear all of the different ways that you're able to impact people's lives and help highlight how much scoliosis infiltrates every aspect of our life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I first started, I think I was just working with teenagers. And the more I got into it, the more I was realizing, oh, there's a whole world of adults out there with scoliosis who are just like me, like having grown up with scoliosis and worn a brace. I wore a brace from the time I was 12 to 18, and then spent the majority of my 20s and into my 30s now, processing what this experience means to me and how it shapes how I understand myself and how I understand the world, and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, I was like, wow, there's this really hungry population out there who could use this work and this information as well. And then just understanding the disconnect that happens between kids and their parents, and how much support parents need in this journey too, and what a missing experience that they're having with not receiving more coaching or support around how difficult this experience is.
Yeah. 12 to 18, so that you wore a brace. And
Yes.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that experience was like for you as a teen? I mean, that's your entire teenage life. wearing braces.
It
So,
it is in fact, yes. Um, yeah. So I think I've always known that I have scoliosis. So there was never like a point at which I became diagnosed because my father is a chiropractor. And so it was sort of something that I've always known. Um, but I got this brace when I was 12, and that experience in and of itself with the casting and going to see this doctor and all the information that he told me about what was happening in my body right now and also what was going to happen in my body, which he spoke with a lot of certainty about in the future, was such a traumatic experience for me. And the first year, I had to wear this brace 20 hours a day, and I had to do exercises 5 days a week, and I had to do different treatments at the chiropractor's office 3 days a week. And I had to be on a special diet as well. And so it was like everything in my life sort of dramatically changed. And I was super active in sports, and I wasn't allowed to play all the sports that I was into because I couldn't be out of my brace for the amount of time that I needed to. So it was just a really, really difficult experience for me. And I think the longer that I was in it, the harder it became, and the more I retreated into my own little world and started disconnecting from friends and disconnecting from just the world around me. And I spent a lot of time in the library researching things and looking up ways of like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so I really credit my braced days to also how deeply attached I became to my imagination and wanting to explore the world and wanting to see things beyond what I felt so trapped and confined inside of, which was my life at that time. So there, like lots of really positive things came out of it as well, but it was truly so challenging. And I think even now, a lot of times when we look back on different parts of our lives with a fresh perspective after things have sort of been processed and reorganized, you can see the past in a totally different way. And so even now, though, I am humbled by what that challenge was for me as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, and just how much strength it takes to be a teenager going through something like that.
mhm.
But I could talk forever about that. So I'll stop there.
I think it's really important to dig into some of that. Something you said right at the beginning of this is your provider was telling you with authority what was going to happen to your body, and like what did he say was going to happen, and what kind of effect did that have on you, like hearing what he was saying about what was going to happen in the future?
Yes. So I say this with, a little bit of a warning out there, I guess, for people that these things that people say aren't necessarily true, but they are difficult to hear, right? So one of the things that he told me was that if I didn't wear my brace for as many hours a day as he was prescribing, and I didn't do all these corrective exercises, that my spine was going to twist and rotate so much that my ribs would puncture my lungs and my heart would fail and I would die early, which you can hear in my voice still. Like, this is a very potent thing to hear when you're 12. And yeah, I mean, it's taken a lot of time and in therapy, even myself, to process how traumatic it was to hear that. And when I work with clients today and I hear how they've had similar experiences with their care providers telling them, like, this is going to happen if you don't do that, it really, I feel how awful that is and how hard it is to hold that, especially when you're so young and don't really have a bigger scope of, like what's okay to hear and what's not okay to hear, what's okay to say, what's not okay to say. And that's not something that's okay to say to a 12-year-old.
No, I just got goosebumps when you told me that. Like, that's horrible.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
really is.
horrible to hear as an adult that's 30, how am I? 37. Like if
Mhm.
somebody told me that now, that would traumatize me now. And then like to hear that at 12, it's just that breaks my heart that you experienced that.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was definitely rough, and that was just one of the things that this guy said. And I think, I still hear, like, there's a lot, I think, of kinds of conversations that doctors are having with their patients that, it's like you want to be clear about what could happen, or you want to motivate your patient in a certain direction to do certain exercises or to take certain measures for your overall health. But I think that, like, speaking with such authority that this is going to happen, not that this is a possibility, or hey, if you do these corrective exercises, what could happen is, like, you could experience greater health, you could experience greater sense of vitality, like framing it in a way that's more positive. I think is so much more ethical and powerful and accurate,
Mhm.
than saying, like, this definitely is going to happen if you don't do X, Y, and Z.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know?
I think that's so important for providers across the board, whether you're working with scoliosis or not, paying attention to what words are coming out of your mouth and how that impacts the person sitting in front of you. And, there, it's not just a diagnosis that you're talking to a human being that has all these layers and is taking to heart everything that you're saying because you're an expert. They're coming to you for, your wisdom and your help.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
our words can be so unhelpful.
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true.
um, so some of the sports and things that you were into doing at the time where you kind of stepped back from those, what are some alternatives that you found, growing up, wearing a brace? I guess let me rephrase that. So, what were some of the sports that you were interested in doing at the time that you felt that you needed to stop doing because of the advice that you were getting?
Well, I was on the basketball team and on the volleyball team, and but I had to pick one. So I continued on with basketball because I don't know why I chose that one, but
Yeah.
I couldn't do volleyball because it would just take me, the practice hours or whatever was too much of a conflict, and I could only be out of the brace for 4 hours a day, and a lot of that time was already being eaten up by my scoliosis corrective exercises. So adding in all these other practices, it
Mhm.
just wasn't going to go together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I continued to play basketball for a while, and then lost interest in it when it became, like, a little too competitive. I'm not a super competitive person by nature. I just like doing it for fun. So eventually it wasn't interesting to me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how we kind of ebb and flow with those things. So, what was your relationship with, if you don't mind sharing, your relationship with your parents, like while you were going through, um, all of the bracing, I mean, the 6 years of treatment and all of that? Like, did you feel like you were able to have open conversations about the way that you were feeling? Or was it kind of more you were just internalizing some of the stuff on your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I did not feel safe sharing how I felt, is the short answer. But I think it's way more complicated than that, right? Because I could witness my parents working so hard to make sure that I was getting the best care, and I I also felt that there wasn't a whole lot of space for me to have an emotional experience about this care, because maybe then I would come across as ungrateful, or it just didn't feel safe enough to share these things. I wouldn't feel understood, or it was really like, this is your treatment protocol, you have to stick to it, and you understand why you have to stick to it, so just stick to it. And you know, there just wasn't any space for that. And I hear that a lot too when I work with teens now, how much they also feel like they have to keep it all to themselves. And because they don't want to upset their parents, you know, they see their parents doing so much and they don't want to feel like an extra burden, or the ways that their family is, and it's really a family thing. It's not even just parents. If you have siblings, it's like the way that they are responding to your care as well has an impact on you, and it also impacts them, you know, watching you go through everything. But there's just so many layers as to why it might not feel safe enough in a family unit to be sharing how you are processing this, which I think is one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about the space that I'm providing, because I'm, you know, this is a space where your kid can come and feel like they can share. And you know, I'm not burdened by their experience in the way that they might feel that sharing with their parents would be, or could be, even if their parents would be open to it, you know. Yeah, I feel like it's so important. But the other thing too is, in all the trainings that I've done, learning these communication skills is something that I've paid like thousands of dollars for, right? Like, we're not taught a lot of skills around how to communicate our emotions, how to hold space for other people's emotions, how to stay present in your own experience when someone is sharing something with you, how to you know, ask certain questions that would invite people to open up in certain ways. All of that, I'm like, this is not just like a parenting failure, you know, like these are skills that take time to learn. You'd have to know that you need to learn them. You'd have to have a curiosity around it. You'd have to have the time to invest into that. Sometimes the money to invest into that. And so I really am like, this is a whole other layer of all of this, that when I am working with parents, I'm like, this isn't, you're not failing your kid in a certain way. You're not failing as a parent. You're not being a bad mother. You know, it's like, this is just a whole nother skill set that no one has given you yet. So I want to make sure that I weave that in there, because I know when I talk about my own experience, I really want to be careful around, you know, like my parents didn't have those skills. And I know that there are lots of other parents out there that don't as well, but everybody wants to do the best that they can. It's just a very complicated situation to be in.
It is. It is. It was so many layers. Kind of like we were talking before we got on hit record. I have a client that I've been working with, and you know, she keeps overhearing conversations that her parents are having with each other, or maybe even like with the doctor when she's not around, and she's, you know, making an effort to try and figure out what's really going on. And you know, it doesn't feel like she can have those conversations with her parents or ask them.
Yeah.
And I think opening those doors, and even as a provider, like for me, I would love to learn how to facilitate those conversations a little bit better between parents and children, because I, you know, kind of feel like I'm in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
in a little bit of a way where, you know, there's information that I know, and I don't want to step on the parents' toes. And I also like don't want that patient to feel like they're in the dark, because it's their own body, it's their own treatment. So they should know the information.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's complicated. It's complicated to be in that position no matter what. I think if I were in your shoes, you know, I would just be curious to ask your patient, like, do you feel comfortable asking your parents, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And then seeing what she says.
Mhm.
Because yeah, like what do you do in that situation, other than maybe at some point ask the parents, if there are conversations that, you might want to all have together about what it might be happening moving forward. Yeah, lots
Yeah.
of layers.
Yeah. Um, so with the work that you do, how does it typically come about that somebody begins working with you, as far as like a parent or even like an adolescent who's going through bracing or just scoliosis treatment?
Hmm. Yeah, so far a lot of my clients have, started off as maybe somebody who's in a workshop with me, or they've heard me speak somewhere, or they've read things that I've written online, and we'll have an initial consultation to see if what they're needing help with is something that I am here to support people with. And I've loved working with parents initially before I start working with their teens, just because I feel like it gives me such a more holistic understanding of what's going on with everybody. And I think when I work with the parents too, then they are equipped with some more skills that when I start working with their teen, their parents are putting some of these skills to work when their teen is ready to come talk to them about certain things. And so yeah, I've worked with people on more long-term basis, and that's been really amazing to watch how using some of these skills and techniques impact how they are communicating with their parents, or talking about their brace or their diagnosis with their friends and family in general, or how they actually start wearing their brace after talking through certain things that were standing in the way before. um, yeah, it's cool. And then just listening to how teens are processing their whole world and how they're getting to know themselves, and watching how powerful it is for them to just have the space to share how they're feeling. um, I just, yeah, I think it's so cool. I love it.
Oh, it's so amazing. And the need, like you said, it doesn't stop with teenagers, it doesn't stop with parents, it continues into adulthood. The things that we carry from treatments as a teen, our own teenage years. Um, how did you come about, processing all of that on your own, yourself, after your teen years, and getting into the work that you're doing? Like, how did you work through what you went through?
Yeah. So when I went off to college, I sort of felt like this whole thing with scoliosis was totally behind me, and I was never gonna have to think about it ever again. And then I took a course in school called Dis-ease in American Culture, and this professor was teaching us all about how our emotions, and also sort of the what she was calling the genetic narratives that run through our family systems, can actually create certain dis-ease in the body. And I also, when I was a teenager, I had hypothyroidism. So that was sort of the first thing that I started to look at was, what happens when we stop communicating how we feel, like how does that actually impact the organs, the structures, the systems that are going on in that same space, right? And that really helped me unlock so much of what was happening in my family, what was happening in my life at that time. And then when I was graduating college, I had this experience that I write about, and I've spoken about before, where I couldn't go to sleep at night. And it was the craziest thing because I've never had trouble sleeping before, but it felt like I was forgetting something, and I couldn't put my finger on, like, what am I forgetting, so that I can go to, like, I'll do it and then let me go to sleep, like I don't know what's going on. But it went on for weeks. And then finally, after, like, I took myself to the ER, even, I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. Um, it like something just magically clicked, or I heard it in my body, that the sensation that I was forgetting was that I needed to put my brace on before I went to sleep,
Oh my
as
God.
I would when I was a teenager. And it blew me away, that I was like, oh my gosh, my body has this felt sensation of needing to do this, because for 6 years, that's what I did every day, right? And what I know now, and that's really what started this whole journey into the mind body connection, and how our body speaks to us, and how we can hold trauma in our body, and how all this stuff works. But what I know now, like when you're finishing college and you're stepping into the unknown, like the body can really it can bring this stuff up, right? It can say like, oh, I need this protective structure to hold me when I'm stepping into the unknown. Or yeah, I mean, it's just
New
so
experience.
fascinating
Yeah.
how it works. Yeah. So that's really what started this whole deep dive into my own process. And then, I mean, I've been in and out of therapy for a while. I've done different trainings, which has also facilitated a lot of my own healing, and just like a larger curiosity of what is scoliosis really, like why do we have this? What is the purpose of this? Like on a much bigger scale than what's going on in my own body, like why is this something that seems to be linked throughout family systems? Like what is the sort of symbolic nature of our spine, and how does that reflect how we connect in the world? And I just, that to me, like, is such a satisfying exploration that's opened up so many doors of awe and fascination and inspiration, about how magical our bodies really are, and how powerful our spines are, and how even though scoliosis is, not necessarily something that somebody would want for themselves, it's also like this huge opportunity to get to know yourself, get to know your body, to heal certain things that maybe you would otherwise never have the chance to. So yeah, and I still feel like I'm at the beginning of like much bigger
Yeah,
learning. So it's exciting.
it is exciting. How would you encourage someone who has scoliosis to feel more curious about their scoliosis instead of like resistant to it and wanting to get rid of it? Like
Yeah.
how encourage them?
Yeah, so I think this is also one of those like multi-layered questions for me, because it's a lifelong thing. I think that there are so many expectations that we are already placing on teenagers, and one of them I think is how, especially coming from parents too, I feel like there's a lot of pressure for teens to really accept this diagnosis, instead of being with them and how challenging it is, right? And so I think one of the first places to start with teenagers to get them to be more curious instead of resistant about it is to be with them in the resistance, to
Mhm.
let it be okay that they don't want this, to let it be okay that they have these feelings about this, to let it be okay that they're angry, that they're in grief over this, that this isn't something that they chose, that they feel like it's something that's happening to them, like hold space for all of that.
Mhm.
Then when those feelings are okay for them to have, then I think you can start to invite somebody into a space where you can get more curious about what this is, what this means. I don't necessarily think that that's always like a developmentally, like I don't think that a teenager necessarily has the full developmental capacity to accept this diagnosis and get curious and have self-compassion. Like to me, I'm like, that's like a lifelong process. And I still have moments where I'm like, this sucks. Like,
Yeah.
I hate this, and I have to walk myself through that. And I think that a lot of that too has to go back to the fact that when I was a teenager, I couldn't fully be in the experience of being upset about it. Um, so yeah, but then I think too, like what's helped me so much is learning how to see the body in a different way, other than this, I'm just made up of bones and muscle and whatever. It's like our bodies are communicating things to us. And when you learn how to listen, you can come into a relationship with your body, and you can learn how to nurture it and be with it. And you don't see it as something that is punishing you or doing something to hurt you or whatever it may feel like. And so like having that reframe of what a body even is and what it's showing us, what it's providing us, what it's making capable for us, I think is a really cool way to reorient someone towards curiosity about their scoliosis.
Yeah, I love that. I just took a course not that long ago, and it's basically kind of like a way of listening to the body and listening to where it's telling us to begin our treatment. So, even though somebody is having pain in their shoulder or in their hip, once you kind of get curious about the body in front of you and do a little bit of investigating and listen to what it's telling you, that pain is likely coming from somewhere else. So,
Mhm,
it could
mhm.
be coming from the liver, it could be coming from the central nervous system. So, learning and gaining those tools is so, so important in a lot of different aspects. But, I just love that element of curiosity
Mhm.
and listening to your body and nourishing it after you've listened to it.
Yeah, yeah. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, I love to hear about the workshop that you're offering. I took one of your workshops before and I got a lot out of it and learned some stuff about myself, about my nervous system and kind of my inherent responses to stress.
Mhm, mhm.
Maybe I didn't know about before, and I just feel like those are really useful tools. So I'd love to hear about what you're offering coming up.
Yeah, so this, I'm thinking about providing a workshop where you can learn how to sort of use these different maps that we have of the body to get curious about what the body is telling you, about your pain, even about what feels good, right? Which I feel like is such an hugely overlooked thing in all of society, but definitely in scoliosis world, there's such an emphasis on our pain. And I would love for us all to get more invested in what brings us joy and pleasure in our bodies, because that heals pain. Um, but yes, so this workshop, I'm thinking, because it's been inspired by my recent move, and when I found out that I had to move, which was on the tail end of like surviving this winter storm that we had in Austin, where we didn't have power for 5 days and it was awful. um, I found out that I had to move because my landlord was selling our house, and I was so stressed out for days, like, and worried about certain things. And eventually one morning I woke up and I was in so much pain in my low back that I couldn't stand up straight. And I was like, okay, what is it that I know about how this works? And I started to get curious about what it is that my body's telling me. I'm like, okay, I've been super stressed out. What do I know about my low back and my legs and what these things sort of symbolize, mean, what they connect me to? And I'm like, suddenly I feel very ungrounded because my housing situation's changing, and moving is very expensive. I'm worried about finances, like these things in our lives impact different spaces in our body. And there are so many maps of how that works, and different cultures around the world have provided us with. And I think when you have this sort of these templates on the back burner, you can put them to use. So I was going over all of that in my mind, and I was like, okay, you know, like, no wonder my sacrum feels totally locked up right now. I feel ungrounded. I feel worried about finances. I feel really stressed out. And so I just took some time to really validate what I was feeling. Like, it's not wrong for me to be stressed out about this. This is a stressful situation, and it's okay for me to have these feelings. And then I spent some time, you know, like that day massaging my low back and doing some stretches. I took an Epsom salt bath and just like really spent a lot of time nurturing and telling myself it was going to be okay. And by the end of the day, most of my pain was gone. And I was just like, wow, like this, it works, you know, like it's so amazing to me how physical our emotions can be. And it's only amazing because we don't grow up in a world where these things are talked about as the same thing. They are talked about as very separate things. So anyways, I say all that to say, I think it's going to be very fun to lead a workshop on this and teach people how they can use certain maps to get curious about what's going on in their body, how they can map certain things out, and get to some of the underlying things, and also learn how to validate what their experience is, learn how to nurture themselves through all of that. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I love that.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
You have so many different things that you already offer that are recorded that people can kind of jump in and go at their own pace as well, in addition to that, right?
Yeah, I have a free course for parents that you can get access to through Teachable, which is also linked on my website. And I made a course for navigating doctor's appointments for parents, helping them with their teens. And I think, to me, because of how traumatic everything was for me, and because I hear so many stories about kids having panic attacks before they're going to their doctor's appointments, and just how difficult it is for everybody involved to be in these spaces. You know, the other thing is, like, seeking medical care is, like, it is stressful. It's not just stressful for people who have scoliosis. It's stressful for most people to go to the doctor's office, you know, and there's so much literature around how important it is to become your own best advocate as a patient seeking care. And hopefully in this course, I really break down like how you actually do that and how parents can support their teens in that space. So that's another thing that I have available for people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been just kind of wrapping up. I've been asking all of my guests on the show, what they are enjoying that is ahead of the curve. So, you know, is there like a book that you've been reading that you're really enjoying, or something new that you've, like a new hobby or something that you recommend people checking out?
So yeah, there's two things, but when you said hobby, The first thing that I do feel like is actually ahead of the curve is I've been learning from this man named Thomas Hubel, who teaches all about healing collective trauma, healing individual trauma, and healing ancestral trauma. And I've been taking this course on this ancestral piece, and it's just been so amazing for me. And I really think, like, you know, our bones sort of are more ancestral. So I just have I link it all back to scoliosis, and listening and learning from him and everything about our nervous system and our ancestral nervous system. It's like amazing. So that's been really exciting. But in this move that I had recently, there's a bowling alley. There's a bowling alley down the road that is actually across from where my father's old office was. So it feels like a reclaiming of this space for me, but also I've learned like some like very important life lessons, I feel like, from learning how to bowl.
Uh-huh.
know, that's been really
Love
fun.
that. Bowling
Yes.
is so fun. I was on a bowling league in grad school. We are all terrible, but it was a lot of fun to
Yeah.
something like that.
It's like it's so wholesome.
It
There's just
is.
something so sweet and wholesome about bowling, and it's fun, it's engaging, and yeah, you really learn how to like tune into yourself, and yeah, I just think it's really cool.
My gosh. Love that. This has been such a fun conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but if people want to find you on social media, how can they find you? How can they work with you? Tell us
Yeah.
about.
So I'm on Instagram at Katelyn Carlson. My website is also katelyncarlson.com. And I offer free 30 minutes calls. So if you are a parent or an adult, you are more than welcome to hop on my schedule. Yeah, there's all sorts of information on there about all sorts of stuff that I do. And I've got a blog and
We love the blog.
yeah.
There's, yeah, you could spend a lot of time, just learning and learning from Katelyn. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's just been a lot of fun to talk to you again. Um, and thanks again for tuning into another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Until next time, stay ahead of the curve.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.